GreenCape is a non-profit organization that drives the widespread adoption of economically viable green economy solutions from the Western Cape here in South Africa. They work with businesses, investors, academia, and government to help unlock the investment and employment potential of green technologies and services and to support a transition to a resilient green economy. Our special guest today on the Water Hour is Senior Water Analyst at GreenCape, Ashton Mpofu. We'll be discussing the GreenCape Market Intelligence Report for water. So don't go away, we will be right back. If you're just joining us, then welcome to the Water Hour. I'm your host, Bridget Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa, and our live stream is brought to you by BeLive Media and the South African Water Chamber. Now, this is an audience-centric show, and we are monitoring the comments, so please feel free to say hello, drop a comment or a question to any of our panelists in the chat. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the GreenCape Market Intelligence Report for water. And our panelists today comprises of Benoit, Fred Platt, and Dr. Anthony Turton from the South African Water Chamber. And our special guest today is Ashton Mpofu. He's a senior water analyst of GreenCape. He's also the national chairperson of the Young Water Professionals South Africa. So let's welcome our panelists to the show. Gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you. Great to have you here again today. Ashton, if I may just ask you to give people just a brief summary of what GreenCape is all about, and your mission and what you do at GreenCape.
Thank you very much, Bridget. I know that is always a difficult one for people to understand who we are and what we do in this space. You find people coming back for the second time, still not getting a clear understanding of what GreenCape does. I'm very happy that you did give a very good introduction about who we are. So yes, we are a non-profit organization that drives the wide-scale adoption of economically viable green economy solutions. So the most importantly, we drive economically viable green economy solutions. So we work in the interface of business, we work with investors, we work with academia, and we also work with government to help unlock the investment and employment potential of green technologies and services. So we are just there to support a transition to a resilient green economy. Maybe just to conclude, I will say also we have a vision of a striving, prosperous Africa that is driven by the green economy. I know that's a mouthful, but I hope that it does put into context of what GreenCape is. Thank you.
I think it absolutely does. Thank you very much for that, Ashton. And just for the sake of anyone who's not watched the show before, Benoit, can you give us just a little bit of the backstory of what the South African Water Chamber is all about?
Thanks, Bridget, and hello to everybody. So what we're really doing is bringing water to center and front stage of our reconstruction and development program. And it's always nice to have eminent people like GreenCape with Ashton in our organization, where we're really talking the same language. Water is taken for granted until the taps run dry, as we have in Gauteng at the moment, despite our dams being empty. But this was predicted quite a while ago. Won't go into that, but I think what's very nice is that from a chamber perspective, we're able now to really coordinate and help join the dots of all the collaboration, because everybody's operating in silos of sorts. And to me, GreenCape is very important, because it's the only province that currently has, and Ashton can talk to us about how they're growing, but it's the only province that really has this type of, let's say, economic enabling through green, through green initiatives, and specifically water, where Ashton's involved. These are important, because we need to spread the word that we are in a water crisis, and we're not going to let this crisis, go to waste. We're using it to attract investment and the likes. And the Water Chamber is really a catalyst for all of these, representing the private sector, whilst collaborating with the public sector, but most importantly, providing that bridge that Ashton speaks about, with the investors locally and abroad. And when South Africa is healthy, so is our surrounding countries like SADC. So that's really where we are, with the chamber. And we don't only take corporate members, we also take, and we have quite a good number of individual members from a very wide spectrum, who have a common interest and a common wish to help get and catalyze our hope that we have in rebuilding our economy through water.
Thanks very much for that, Benoit. And Fred, can I ask you to just give us a comment on why the business sector should get involved with the South African Water Chamber?
Thank you, Brigitte. There's a whole series of reasons at the end of the day why business should get involved. Firstly, we understand that water, from a business imperative, and a central business imperative, is critical in order for a business to succeed within the South African environment. Secondly, there is the idea or the understanding that water is the ultimate economic enabler, which means that we can address a number of the growth imperatives and create opportunities for business, but also impact the marginalized communities and create the employment and address all of the other issues that we face within the country. The final reason is really that we believe that business needs to take a leadership position alongside government in formulating ideas, formulating the implementation of the wonderful policies that we have in place. But we know that implementation at the end of the day is the challenge. So it's really a platform for business to reach out its hand to government and to say, let's take this together, let's create an environment where we can invest into the water sector, and in doing so we can unlock the incredible opportunity that we have as a country.
Thanks very much for that overview, Fred. And then, Anthony, if I can ask you, we're going to be unpacking the GreenCape Water Market Intelligence Report and some of the opportunities that'll unlock for municipalities related to infrastructure. If I can just ask you to give us a brief overview of the state of our water infrastructure and why we need to take a look at this.
Yes, Brigitte, good afternoon to the listeners. The water is always a very complex issue, and it's quite difficult for the outside person, or the lay person, to come to grips with what's going on. So, in a nutshell, what is happening is that South Africa has reached the limit of its locally available freshwater resources. This is a fact. So we are now a water-constrained economy. At the same time, our infrastructure is generally in a deteriorating condition, but more importantly, our institutions are also in a state of collapse. So it's the state of collapse of the institutions that is really the worrying factor, because it is from inside the institutions that solutions are supposed to be generated and thought through. And just this week, I've been involved in a number of grassroots level meetings. I live in KZN now, and the level of anger at grassroots level is just growing, and it's unbelievable from all walks of life, all from organized business to just ordinary citizens. They're just sick and tired of what's going on, and ultimately the solutions are going to be generated by entities like GreenCape. They are aggregators of solutions, if you like. And that's an important thing because the chamber is also an interest aggregator. So the aggregation is something of mutual interest. But more importantly, the future water is increasingly going to lie in unconventional supplies and unconventional solutions. When I say unconventional, I refer to things that have not been run of the mill up to now, not because they're weird and wonderful, but just because the model that we've used to develop our water sources up to now has taken us as far as it can, and we now have to invent a new model as we go forward. And this is where the chamber plays a very big role in trying to understand what that new model will be, and ultimately it's going to come down to new forms of funding and new technology mixes, what we refer to as a symphony of technologies. And that's where GreenCape comes in, because they are aggregators of that symphony of technologies, or at least of some elements of that. But the important missing link now is we've got to start educating the municipal people, because it's the municipal level of interaction that is going to start generating the need for these, let's call it contractual things to happen, these deals to be concluded. And that's kind of really the background to what it is that we are talking about on this general podcast, but in this particular one today as well.
Thanks very much for that background, Anthony. Much appreciated. So shall we move towards unpacking the GreenCape Water Market Intelligence Report for 2021? Is that a good place to start, Ashton?
Yeah, I think we can do so. The count has been laid.
So I believe there's three things that was covered in the 2021 report, which is non-revenue water, non-sewage sanitation systems, and wastewater sludge beneficiation. Shall we start with non-revenue water?
Yeah, no, sure, for sure, Bridget. As Tony has said, if you look at our water situation, we are really constrained. And the most fascinating thing about us as human beings, in the country, is that as much as we know that our supply is diminishing, we know the recurrent droughts that we've been facing over the years, we are still inefficient in terms of transporting that water from the source to the consumers. So we're looking at someone that is, using empty pockets, to gather maybe finances to pocket some coins in your pocket, but your pocket has got holes. So you're not going really to, save any money by doing such. So we need to get to a point that we look into our infrastructure, as Fred has touched on as well. We have got a very aged infrastructure that was laid back some decades back before some of us were born, and that has been poorly maintained over the years. So now what we see that most of the water that is being transported all the way from our source to the consumers is being wasted along the way, and this has to stop. So we're looking at a tune of about 700 million of rands that needs to be invested in order for us to ensure that as we go towards 2030, in accordance to the Water and Sanitation Master Plan, we plug all the leaks and we stop our losses. We have had an average of about 30 to 50% in some municipalities in terms of non-revenue water. Then we need also to be really clear about this definition of non-revenue water, as Benoit always like to stress that it's not an issue, of water that is just being lost in the pipes alone, but we're talking about, looking at the meters, how much we pumped from the rivers or from the dams, and how much reached, the consumers. So these are the losses. It includes even faulty meters, and things like that. So it's not only the pipe on its own, there are other things that are involved. So we really need to step up and pull up our socks as a country and try and ensure that we plug the leaks. We have got people that do not have water until today. And as much as we are thinking about laying infrastructure to give other people water for the first time, those that have got water at the moment are in trouble as well, because their pipes are leaking, and it might get to a point that they'll never receive that water again. So we need to be really careful, and not to be caught with our pants down, as it has happened in the past. We need to really step up and ensure that we solve this issue of non-revenue water.
Thanks for that background to that. Anthony, I saw you wanted to make a comment.
Yes, okay. Let's just quickly understand this non-revenue water issue. You must appreciate that non-revenue water is a factor in that it does not, it is the absence of revenue flow to the local authority. And local authorities are always cash-strapped. They're always short of money. They forever go to fiscus and ask for more and more money. So why should they get more money from the fiscus when they haven't yet done their basic homework to make sure that the water that they've got is generating revenue? And if you go a little bit deeper than this, you'll find that this issue of non-revenue water lies at the very heart of a cascade effect, because the municipalities don't generate revenue from the water. The municipalities don't pay the bulk water supplier, the Rand Waters or the Berg Waters or whatever, whatever the bulk water, Maghali's water, etc. They don't get paid. Therefore, those institutions now start coming under financial pressure, and ultimately it becomes a cascading effect. So non-revenue water is really at the very, very heart of any form of stabilization. And even if we're going to start talk about private capital coming into the space, why would private capital come in before there can be demonstrated that the local authority has the ability to look after its own affairs? And I'll say one more thing before I hand over to the next speaker. There's a lot of innovation coming out of this space. And just yesterday, I was in a meeting with some people that have developed, believe it or not, an app. Okay, now I'm not really an app guy. I know this is a millennial kind of thing, but there's a fantastic millennial app now that automates the process embedded in the different parts of legislation, etc. That when a dispute is declared because of some or other meter-related problem, etc., then there's a whole lot of constitutional issues that are kicked in, and this thing automatically does all of that without you even knowing it. So if you simply click on this thing and you declare a dispute because your meter reading is not what it should be, or you haven't been billed according to your meter, then suddenly you've got a problem. And that's one issue that's coming out right now. But the other issue that's coming out is the possibility of setting up a special purpose vehicle to start collecting revenues and allocating those revenues in a legal way to operation and maintenance. So these are two little things bubbling around in the background, and they're both technology related. And they will eventually start coming together in some other viable form. They may be not quite ready yet, but they're starting to show their head above the parapet right now. Back to you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, ring fencing of funding for water is always a hot potato. Fred, I believe you had a comment.
Yeah, I think Anthony put it very well in saying that non-revenue water is the absence of revenue flow. But the other side of that equation is it's not the absence of cost. So the cost is already carried in the system, and therefore the solutions are actually not that difficult to fund, because the money is already available, and the payback periods can be calculated quite easily using the non-revenue water. Non-revenue water obviously is as a result of either a leaking infrastructure, which is what Ashton has been talking about, or the non-payment, and those have severe impacts on the ability to maintain the infrastructure. But as I say, when you understand that you're constantly investing into the cost of leaking infrastructure because it's leaking and you're paying for it, and when you start channeling that funding into finding the solution, and then, but as Tony says, that's the foundation of any further investment. You can't keep putting water into a leaking bucket and think that you're going to come up with a solution. So we very much, sometimes end up with these ideas of grand schemes, when in fact the foundation or the first step is to address non-revenue water. and making sure that we keep every drop in the system and that it gets paid for.
Benoit, how bad is non-revenue water in South Africa? How big of a problem is it really?
I'll end off with a positive note though. So the bad news is 41% on average, of which 90% is leaks. So we are again best in the world at making leaking buckets. And let me stop on that. But at least they galvanize, so they look quite good. But a lot of the piping has to be converted from asbestos to PVC and all the likes. And some of the major metros have already embarked on that. But, to me, there's a global issue because everybody sweat those assets. And why politicians do is because it's below the ground. And society doesn't know until the tap runs dry, or the sewage backs up into your house or something of those likes. And so, to me, my question to Ashton is on the back of this 41% hole, what are the type of investments that we're trying to do? Is it from digitization through to smart waters where digitization plays a role? Is it to bulk metering? What sort of opportunities are there for investors from a GreenCape perspective to address the non-revenue water? What are you looking in attracting to your region?
Thanks, Benoit. In terms of innovation, I think we've rightfully put it. We're looking into smart metering, even on a bulk scale as well. We're looking into bulk metering as well, and there's a whole range of other technologies as well. I mean, trenchless, technologies as well that have come into play, where we can now even use GIS and remote sensing and things like that to predict, where the next leak is going to be. So this is very important for South Africa because we do not have the fiscal muscle, to just start maintaining all the pipelines or ensuring that all the meters are working. So at least if we use these technologies, to do some scheduled maintenance, to know, okay, this time around, let's rather, focus on pipe number 42 north or whatsoever the synergies are in the municipal side of things. They repair that one because they've already predicted that is the next one that is going to leak or that is going to burst. So these are the technologies that we're looking at. But in summary, I maybe say that these are technologies that are more in the fourth industrial revolution. These are the digital space where these technologies are coming from. These are the technologies that excite us as young people, because we believe that they can make a big difference.
Thanks very much for that, Ashton. Fred's got a comment to make, but I also just want to ask, and I don't know who's prepared to take this one. I know that a while back, the government had this war on leaks program, water leaks or something. What went wrong with that? Why did it fail? But Fred, let's go to your comment first.
Okay, maybe I can answer it in a roundabout way and just touch on what Ashton is saying. So I think what we've had from the discussion so far is we understand that leaks are a major problem, non-revenue water. We understand that we have a backlog in our infrastructure. We understand where we are and the challenges. We also understand that getting ahead of this curve is incredibly difficult if we keep on wanting to do things the way we've always done. And so you heard Anthony and everyone else talk about technology and the application of technology in order to kind of leapfrog this. And I think the key here for me is that we pinpoint using technology where you spend 20% of the funding to get 80% of the benefit. And we know that the Pareto principle generally applies. If we go the other way around and we just throw people and money at the problem, we end up spending 80% of the money, and we'd be very lucky if we get 20% of the benefit. So for me, it's really just a question of saying what tools are available to us before we just rush in to go and do something. How do we use technology? How do we leapfrog this whole process in such a way that when we invest the 20%, we actually get the 80% benefit? And I hope that sets some form of a background as to your question. But when it comes to venturing into that area, other people are braver than I am.
Thanks very much, Fred. Ashton, with that smile on your face, I can tell you've got some comment to make.
No, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I guess Benoit and the rest have been there for longer. I do not know why such systems fail. Because you can speak about the green drop as well. You can talk about the no drop as well. I mean, all those they went, and along the way they failed. So we have a big role to play. I mean, in terms of influencing that these things must come back, and we must do something about it, because some of these things were really working for us. But what I wanted to say before maybe we move on to the next opportunity was that, sometimes introducing digitalization, it's also something that the country might not be ready for, because we're talking about what about jobs? If you look at the side of transport, we have seen the transport department recently choosing to use labor-intensive methods, to repair the roads, because they want to ensure that there are jobs for people. Now, if we maybe digitalize, there's a fear as well that comes to people to say, we used to send individuals, to go and take meter readings, and those people are employed. Now, if this can be done remotely, and we as a country do not have the capacity, to manufacture or to maintain, some of these digitalized, systems, then it means that, we are taking away jobs. So we need to build capacity, in order to say, can we make these technologies, and can we employ people in these different structures? So it comes back to the 80-20 principle that Fred was talking about, So we need to be clever about it. But this system of maybe, always relying on international, technology providers coming into the country and, supplying their technologies, we must look into it. I think that's where the water and sanitation industrialization master plan comes into play, where we want to build capacity locally, to manufacture some of these technologies ourselves, so that we create jobs. So we must, tread carefully in that regard, and try and ensure that we don't lose the big goal here, which is to attract investment and at the same time to create jobs.
Thanks very much for that input. So one of the other things that the report covers is decentralized wastewater treatment systems. And before we ask Ashton what the report says, who wants to just briefly explain to us what decentralized wastewater is about? Who'd like to take that question?
Ben was probably best. Yes, Ben was best suited, but I can catch the ball if he doesn't want to have it.
I'll try and juggle it. Thanks, Tony. So since the advent of, let's go back to the first industrial revolution, one of the reasons why guys like myself and Tony, soon Fred, but why us guys live so long, as Ashton said, we've been around a while, is that we actually take all these harmful bacteria and viruses out of our living space, where we used to have the fowl, the cattle, the pigs, and all the likes, and throw it into the road. And we had disease and bacteria amongst us. So what you did in the first industrial revolution, in London, is that really pipe the sewage and get it out of the town, so that in towns with the size they are today, get it out of the town, normally by gravity at that time, and treat it there, and then dispose of it to an acceptable quality, whatever that was at the time, so that downstream users did not get sick, etc. And we've really perfected that art. And South Africa is in the middle of biological nutrient removal with the Baden-Foe process. And we've actually gotten very good at that. And yes, in South Africa, I'm talking about our country. So we've been able to do that very effectively. The problem we've had for 30 years is that we have not been able to keep up, because the economy hasn't grown quick enough to increase the capacity of these plants and the pump station, the reticulation systems. I mean, if the water system leaks, do you think we're going to spend money in the sewage system? Which is the yuck factor. So we haven't kept up. And as a consequence, it was very well publicized in Cape Town, but in Gauteng, we've been in this mode for over 5 years already, is that we have to stop all developments, because if you want to develop a property, a factory, etc., you cannot get a construction permit. Your plans will not be passed because we can't take your sewage. As a result of the outcry, the bylaws have been adapted, is you must put in your own system now, your own package plant above a certain threshold, etc. In Ekurhuleni, we've had this problem for between 5 and 10 years already. So people have grasped the opportunity to an extent, despite the Metro not liking this, whereas Cape Town is promoting it. And I think we're going to see most, and eThekwini promotes it also, is that what we have to do now, instead of taking all of our waste far out of towns, and with huge pump stations, Cape Town, 300-400 pump stations, it really becomes big. What we do is treat it at source. But when you do that, you're able to now harvest water, energy, and chemicals at source, so the decentralized, to me, it's like, instead of having an IBM mainframe, we've got our laptops and our phones. It's a distributed network. It also distributes the risks from an environmental perspective. Any spillage is now small and not big, so they're not in 100, 200 megaliters a day instead of 1 or 5 megaliters a day. And believe it or not, we're able now in water and in waste to make smaller plants more cost effective than bigger plants in miniaturization of various technologies. But the big difference, in my opinion, is that we're able to do it much faster. These big plants take 10 years to design, license, construct, and implement. Whereas the decentralized ones, we can do in 6 to 9 months, Metro willing, okay? Because it's got to do with Metro, with approval processes. But once you got the crisis, you get the systems in place. So from my perspective, I believe, and the last count I saw, is over 25 decentralized package plant manufacturers, from a couple of liters a day to a couple of megaliters a day. South Africans, mostly South African tech, but some represent a foreign tech, where there's huge opportunity. So from my perspective, it's not going completely decentralized. I think the answer is in a blend of both. But I mean, Ashton, I think, Cape Town is going to be the incubator of the next generation of decentralized wastewater treatment and reuse. I think so, but what does your report say?
Thanks, Benoit. Yes, I mean, we looked into that specifically on the report. We looked at the issues of lack of sanitation to 14 million of our population. So we're looking at these non-soil sanitation systems or decentralized wastewater treatment systems, to provide sanitation to this population. And I mean, we are living in a decade of implementation in accordance to the SDG goals. And we are already, 2 years into that decade, and we've got only 8 years, I can even say 7, because already in 22, to ensure that we achieve SDG 6.1, universal access to water and sanitation. So this is where such systems, as you have said, Benoit, come into play. And there's lots of savings, and it will enable us, to leapfrog to 2030. One of the things we spoke about, infrastructure that is, leaking and is old. And if you decentralize, you are actually eliminating, the need to lay down expensive infrastructure that you are struggling to maintain. You are eliminating the need for pumping, and pump stations, or even energy, to pump all that water from one place to another. So at the end of the day, if you look at the time as well, as Benoit has said, that most of our treatment works are operating above capacity. And if you have heard also that, most of them, even over 50%, that is functional. So it's water in and water out, you see. So, and it's impacting on our catchments, it's impacting on our raw water quality. So there's a lot that is at play. But what is the solution then? I think we need to look into allowing private players, allowing these decentralized water treatment works to come and give us, and elevate us from all this lack of water treatment, because if we continue in this trajectory, it's actually making of a disaster. If we look into 2030, we won't achieve those SDGs. They'll become like the Millennium Development Goals that we didn't achieve in 2050. So we need a mindset shift. I know that when you talk about these systems, you need also to look at the regulatory side of things, because in accordance to the Constitution, only municipalities have got that mandate, to offer, water and sanitation. But now we need to tease. This is where the chamber comes through, and where GreenCape comes in, to look into changing legislative in some way, and we have got WSIs, we've got WSPs, and allowing, private players to come through and be responsible for treating some of this water. But of course, it's not easy from the lens of the municipality, because the trust that we can give to a private player to treat that water to quality. At the same time, the private player look at the municipalities failing to do the work. They want also a piece of it. So we need to get in one room and accept our failures and look at the reality, that this is what we can do. So we as GreenCape, we foresee, we have heard about the press release from the city of Cape Town about, working together with property developers to look into the use of package plants, for some of these properties that can't be connected to the main grid due to lack of capacity. So yeah, I think from the report, really, it was mostly looking into sanitation, but this is twofold. You can also look at it from the angle of water reuse, because some of this water can be reused on site, and then you reduce your demand, so, and it has got potential savings and a good business case, because you consume less and you discharge less, and then you are saving a lot as a business. So we are in a revolution, or in an era where we'd like to promote circular economy, and also in the water aspect as well. If these can be installed, even in an industrial location, they start to speak about eco-industrial parks where they're net zero. All the water that is being consumed is treated on site, and it's used by the industry. It's fit for purpose. We don't need to always use drinking water for some of the purposes that we need it for. But some things like flushing and processed water for some non-food industries, they can use processed water that is not up to SAWC 241. So we need to really think deeply about this opportunity. And I think there's lots that is happening in this space through the Water Research Commission, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We have an opportunity really to lead the world. Unfortunately, we're going to have our first non-soil sanitation conference in Pretoria in 2020, but due to COVID, that never happened. But we look forward to really stepping up and promoting decentralized wastewater treatment works.
Our systems seem to not be geared for water reuse. We're still using drinking water to flush our toilets. Do we have a hope of ever changing that? Or is that too big a thing? Ashton, that's to you.
No, it's doable. We can look into dual reticulation. The city of Cape Town has got what you call the treated effluent, program, where they pump water from their treatment works into industrial locations and also to supply farmers. And this is being increased, over the next 5 years, to cover, I think, over 980 kilometers of extension. So we're looking at, starting to realize that, there are opportunities, to use treated effluent than just relying on discharging it back into the rivers and even back into the land. So we have an opportunity to have a dual reticulation, to say alternative water sources keep municipal water maybe for drinking, but you can also use other sources of water, for other non-potable purposes. So this is where WSIs come in, and with agreement between a stakeholder and the municipality, these things are possible and these things are doable.
Fred, I think you've got a comment on how we can turn this problem into an opportunity.
Yeah, I just listening to Ashton, there's a number of drivers that we need to understand why people change. So from a political perspective, there's a series of issues that we need to address, and then from a business perspective, we need to look at what will drive that behavior. Now, when we look at the current problem, the moment we look at it in the conventional way, and Tony always speaks about the fact that we look at water as a resource, as a stock, and then we consume it and we dispose of it. We sit with a certain paradigm there. We look at our wastewater or our sewage and we say we have a problem. Our sewage works are dysfunctional. So that's the paradigm within which we operate. When we move, and I think I heard Ashton use the word beneficiation. I'm not sure if I was right, but he did. He's nodding. So the moment we start looking at that problem and we start seeing it as a resource, and we start saying, hold on, here is, and you're talking about, will we ever get to a stage where we reuse? The moment we understand that dysfunctional sewage works is actually a resource. There's water, there's energy, there's chemicals, there's whatever in that process. And we can align the economic value of that with the political ability to meet the needs of the people, to provide service, to meet the goals that have been set. Then everybody aligns around a common objective. And then it's no longer a question of, who's interfering in who, but rather we have one common objective that allows us to get to that position.
Fred, thanks. And I want to just pick up on a comment by Anthony talking about dual stream reticulation being a major opportunity. And after that, I'd like to go to Benoit for a comment. But first, Anthony, over to you.
Yes, so I'm very glad that Ashton has used the word dual stream reticulation, because I used that about 10 years ago in an interview on Talk Radio 702 with Jenny Cruz-Williams, believe it or not. And while I was talking to Jenny about this dual stream reticulation, a very animated gentleman got on the air and took me on and told me I was talking utter nonsense and blah blah blah. And he said that I'm creating all kinds of false expectations, and it can't be done, and da da da. And Johannesburg has only got one piping system for drinking water and one piping system for wastewater, and it can't be done, da 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 da. And I said, well, just stop, and I let him carry on with his tirade. And when I've drawn all of his anger, I said, so let's analyze the problem. Are the sewers in Johannesburg healthy at the moment, or are they in need of repair? Well, yes, they are in need of repair. Okay, so in other words, they must be dug up at some point in time anyhow. Right. Number two, is the high pressure drinking water potable system in a good state of functionality? No, it's not. It needs repair. So in other words, you're telling me that both the wastewater system and the potable water system actually has to be dug up at the moment. So instead of putting in one crew to dig up the wastewater and one crew to dig up the other stuff, and then they work at cross purposes, and the one puts one thing in and another one's to pick through the work that the other one just finished. Let's do it all together. Let's rebuild our cities. Let's create a kind of Marshall Plan, if you like, modernizing our cities. And in the process, we've got to introduce this dual stream reticulation system, because one of the reasons it hasn't been implemented in South Africa is a very fundamental, very simple reason, and that is that our building codes do not allow for it, or have not yet made accommodation for it. So our building codes at the moment are such that any building has got one small bore pipe that comes into the building of potable water, and one large bore 110 bore wastewater pipe that goes out of the building. That's it, okay? So when you want to do a dual stream reticulation system, which they're doing in Cape Town already now, they're making it available to some users. In places like Australia, where they are fundamentally water constrained, there they've gone one step further, and they provide each consuming unit, each household or each factory or whatever, with two pipes. One pipe of potable water and one pipe of processed grey water. And that processed grey water is for gardening purposes or car washing purposes or non-potable use or flushing toilet purposes. So now you've got to change your building codes. And this, of course, we haven't done in South Africa. So what's happening now is Ashton's group is really working ahead of the curve, because these ideas and these technologies are coming on track. But, of course, the regulatory environment is lagging way behind, and the building code and planning department of the municipalities is lagging way behind. And in fact, if you fast forward that now, you'll find that some of your big commercial real estate people, I'm thinking here now about Growth Point Properties, I'll mention them by name. Growth Point Properties is a very, very innovative group of property owners, because they are implementing this independently of the building code. So they're designing the next generation of green buildings exactly with this in mind. Because if you're going to start replumbing your building to enable you to flush your toilet with grey water, the cost is so high that it's prohibitive. But if you build it into the building as new build from the beginning, it's entirely doable. And if you reverse out of the situation at the moment, and you've looked at what's happened now because of the COVID-19 pandemic in South Africa, significant portions of our commercial real estate are currently standing empty because companies have closed down. And I've just read this very week that that some of these big commercial blocks are now being converted into residential units. Well, there you have a perfect opportunity. While you're doing the rebuild, why not simply plumb it out from the beginning for dual stream reticulation, where you bring your clean potable water in, you use that only for bathing and showering and drinking purposes, but then your grey water that comes in, treated grey water, goes to flushing toilets, and then you capture all that, you separate grey water and black water at source, so that what that does is it reduces the flow of water to the wastewater works, which means your wastewater works are no longer over capacity, and you start getting this cascade effect. So in other words, this is a mindset change. It's going to be a regulatory change. It creates an entire business opportunity. It creates a driver of economic activity and an employer of tens of thousands of semi-skilled people. I mean, this is almost a heaven sent, if you like, if we think of it in the right framework. So I now took this gentleman on from Johannesburg Water. He told me that I didn't know what I was talking about. And ultimately, the bottom line is, government drives this thing, government makes the decisions, and government will be held accountable at the end of the day. It's entirely technically doable. Someone just got to say, this is what we're going to do. This is our plan. This is our strategy going forward. And this is part and parcel of the job creation and rejuvenation strategy of the country or the city or the region, whatever it is.
So Fred asked the question, should it not be mandatory for new developments? And you touched on that, Anthony, when you said that this is totally doable, and we've got opportunities now with buildings that are not being used, that are being turned into residential. So that's a starting place. Ashton, is this something that GreenCape would be promoting? And Benoit, is this something that the water chamber would be promoting?
Thanks, Brigitte. I think yes. I mean, this is the future, and we believe that this is the way to go, and this is a sustainable way to go. As we have said, that we promote economically viable green solutions. So we need to look into regulations, as Anthony has said. I know that with the city of Cape Town, immediately after the drought, the bylaw requests that it demands that each and every new property development must at least show, an alternative water installation, or else also show a way of saving water. So each and every new building, that goes through the city, to be passed and allowed to be built, it needs to show that there are water saving initiatives. Of course, we also have got the Green Building Council of South Africa. That does it, in a non-regulatory way, but in a more, being certified as a green building. So there are many ways of doing it. Like Fred has said earlier on, that you need to understand what the people need and what the people want. So regulatory-wise, yes, it can be done. I think it can be taken step by step. And with us, promoting and doing all the things in play, we might get to a point where we actually, look into dual reticulation and also, opening up, for decentralized wastewater treatment works. And also, I mean, industrial parks, they are under the municipality, so if we have got the ACZs and ITZs and things like that, it might be easy, as a government, to actually tell each and every tenant and put it in their lease agreement to say that whatever you release, it must be treated on site, and you must demonstrate, water efficiency within your operations. So these are things that are doable. You just start including them bit by bit, and by the time we get to 2025, 2030, some of these things will really be a part of our regulations, and we need to abide by that. But yeah, there's problem of implementation, Brigitte. I think it's a story for another day. Our regulations are said to be, well standard. We are we commended for that. But there's an issue of implementation. We talk about water pollution. We are aware who's polluting. If we go to where we are as GreenCape in Mpumalanga, it's not a secret that mines are polluting. The catchments there. But what can be done? Do you continue finding the mines? And them paying? What should be done? So you need to be really strategic in terms of engaging different stakeholders, because these are the people that are employing, the masses, and at the same time, they have a flaw in terms of polluting groundwater, So you need to be careful how you tackle the space. Yeah, thank you.
Ashton, that's a huge topic, and maybe Anthony, I know you could probably talk for hours on this topic, but just give us a brief overview of what our minds are up to in terms of water reuse and pollution.
So you're asking me for that?
Yes.
Well, water is, ultimately, the bottom line is we have to use our water. If we don't do it, we've simply run out of it in 2002. So we have no more water. So it's simply being driven from the ground. We have to reuse our total available water resource at the moment, 1.6 times by 2035. Simple as that. That's the number. We've got to recycle existing water 1.6 times, and we're going to have happy, smiling faces and full employment by 2035. So that's the market. And in fact, the market for new water is equivalent to approximately 25 billion cubic meters of water per annum. That is 2/3 the volume of all of our dams in the country. That's the business case for new water. So these are two major drivers of potential investment and innovation. The question is, how are those things going to be articulated by the people that are in power, because they've ultimately got to enable it, because the National Water Act says that water is a national resource, and therefore the state controls it, and it's got no economic value. So therefore, that's the reality. So how do we put the square peg in the round hole together? This is what the challenge is.
I can't believe we've reached a time where we need to be wrapping up. So can we just get a summary from each one of you? Fred, shall we start with you?
Yeah, I think it's Ashton has raised so many issues, and the debate has raised so many issues. But what for me is critical is that we recognize, we know we've got a problem. We all do. And if that's the approach, we need to say, what is our turnaround strategy? Our turnaround strategy must be to firstly ring fence the bad business, if I can call it that, and make sure that we're not perpetuating the problem. So whatever new developments, whatever new areas, we've got to make sure that we're not creating and perpetuating a problem. The second thing is we then need to say, how do we deal with the existing problem? And how do we, by changing our lens, turn the existing problem into an opportunity by applying the available technology that's available globally, bearing in mind what Ashton has said around job creation, etc. But that job creation, in our discussion, it was quite an interesting thing for me, because on the one hand, we see that digitization might impact on jobs. But on the other hand, we're saying that a dual reticulation system should unlock a whole lot of jobs. So we've got to look at that balance, and we've got to say, how do we have a strategy that straddles this, all of these challenges we're facing, attracts investment into the sector, addresses the issues in terms of the constitution and in terms of the societal issues that we know, and there's a sweet spot in the middle, and I think that's where GreenCape is sitting and saying, how do we assist in unlocking, and that's also certainly where the chamber wants to play.
Thanks very much, Fred. A very important aspect too. We'll go to Ashton for a final comment, then to Anthony, and I think we'll end with Benoit.
Thanks, Brigitte. Yeah, I think in conclusion, I think we have an opportunity to do what is right. And I think 2030 is doable as long as we all come together in one room and we speak with one voice. I think it's high time that we stop working in silos. I think this is also an example. If GreenCape can, work together with the chamber, and other stakeholders in the space, we can do more, because we seem to have the solutions. We know what is supposed to be done, so we just need to put the nuts and the bolts together and drive the nail home, and solve all these problems. People are looking at us, out there for solutions, as experts in the field, and we need to give it to them. And we have the knowledge, we have got the skills. So it's all a matter of us understanding each other and speaking with one voice. So I think with these opportunities, technology is coming in the space, and us really drafting, a clear way forward of what is good for South Africa, what is good for our own landscape and environment. I always say to tech providers, sometimes what you see happening in other countries or in other worlds might not work for South Africa. You come and give us water, and tomorrow we will take the tap and go sell it. So we vandalize at the same time. So so we need really to create, co-create and create solutions that are meaningful to us as South Africa.
Thanks very much for that, Ashton. Anthony, can we have a final comment from you?
Yes, just briefly, I'd like to just pull out and highlight what Ashton has just said. Two very important things there. It's the opportunity to do what is right. I'm seeing this all over the show. I've got a very, very wide footprint, and I see it bubbling up all over the show, from highly capacitated, technically competent groups down to just ordinary grassroots people are frustrated and angry. So time to do what is right. And the second thing is that everyone's looking to somebody for a solution. So there's a handful of technically competent professionals. That's what the Water Chamber is about, bringing this solution thinking to the fore. So I think we've got a very good working relationship with GreenCape. This is an example of taking it forward now. The bottom line is that all of these problems are in fact nothing more than opportunities for applying our mind and for doing things better and for creating a better life for all South Africans, which is really what the ultimate goal is about: inclusive economic growth, using water as an economic enabler so that everybody can reach their full potential as a human being. That's I think a noble vision. That's what that I can buy into, and it's simple. Everyone can understand. Back to you.
Thanks very much for that. And we'll take a final comment from Benoit.
Thanks, Brigitte, and thanks, Ashton, for coming on board. Really good. We look forward to the 2022 version. And, to me, what really sticks out, the word GreenCape to me could also be Circular Cape. And so from a macro thematic perspective, we need to embrace the circular approach to doing everything. And the reality is there's 15 million jobs available in the USA, although they report 5% officially unemployment. Europe is very, very similar. When you're below at 5%, there is no unemployment. The reality is the circular economy. So looking at all the green components, be it energy, water, materials, and the likes, it generates more jobs. Not only does it generate jobs, it generates more dignified jobs, more skilled jobs, and there ain't enough skilled people to do it. So to me, the fourth industrial revolution, and we're actually moving into the fifth. So from a water environmental perspective, we've got to up our game because we're lagging a little bit there. And we need to embrace it. The only constant thing is change here, and it's those who change and adapt who are economically prosperous. And we are not in that bunch at the moment, although we do have snippets of the thinking. And yes, I agree with Tony. We've got to bring all of the like-minded associations, and I think we've gone a long way to doing it with GreenCape and others, whereby we're able to lobby with a point of strength, with sanity, so that we can not only address the SDGs, which is to me a very high-level, long tunnel. We have to do things now, and there is so much work available in doing this. It's just a matter of political will. Believe you me, the politicians will want to do this if they want to stay in power, irrespective of which party they're with. And I think water is it was the 4 of the top 5 in the municipal elections as a topic of who I'm going to vote for. Okay, it's never been like that. And I think it's going to lead to 2024 like that. So it means that we need to make sure that we equip our politicians. The civil servants are not the issue, it's the politicians. We need to equip them adequately, supported by the civil servants, to embrace the circular revolution. And to me, that's the rapid economic transformation that we're talking about. Very, very different stuff. Thanks a lot, Ashton. It was really, really good having you on our show.
Thanks very much, Benoit, and also a huge thanks to Ashton for joining us from the GreenCape today. You were watching the Water Hour, and we were discussing the GreenCape Market Intelligence Report for water. Thank you for staying with us, and if you're catching this on the replay, do feel free to post any questions or comments in the chat. Thank you for joining us today. Take care. Until next time, we'll see you soon.